Hello there, kia ora. You might not be aware of it, but we're on the precipice of what could be the most perception changing moment in New Zealand media history when it comes to how we perceive politicians, politics, and the work of government. And it's all down to the fact that two people have left their jobs. You see, you've probably heard already that Jessica Mutch Mackay is standing down in about 2 weeks as the chief political editor for TVNZ. You might not have heard that Joe Moyer is taking over as the chief political editor for RNZ as Jane Peterson, her predecessor, moves on to another role within the organisation. But those two organisations have massive influences on how the public perceive everything our politicians do and who they are. You see, research that was done out of AUT annually for the last 3 years shows that TVNZ is our most watched and most trusted media source for television broadcast. And in the radio space, Radio New Zealand fills that spot as the most trusted. But the amount of influence that media has over how public perceive what's going on is really high. Research has been going on for decades into this, and it all comes back with the same findings. There is a discernible difference between the bias that our media has and the perception that the public has at the end. Now, the two people that are taking over these roles at RNZ and TVNZ, well, we don't know exactly where they stand. Jo Moyer, who's taking over on RNZ, she trained up under Jane Peterson. She's got a very long history working in a whole bunch of different media outlets like the newsroom. But we don't have a replacement yet for TVNZ, so we don't know who this new person is and what kind of influence and bias that they'll be bringing to it. And while there will always be an argument that media shouldn't have a bias, individuals do, and it can't be helped. It's just human nature. And that bias does come through in all content that anybody makes. It comes through in my content, it comes through in the content of pretty much any kind of person that you're watching on any kind of online platform. It just might not necessarily always be as obvious as it is on mine. But having these new people in charge of our two most watched and trusted media sources, well, that's quite fascinating to watch, and it comes at a really critical time because research has also shown that the trust levels in our media outlets are falling, and they've been falling for a consistent number of years now. Again, there's a whole bunch of reasons for it, but a lot of it comes down to, well, public perception of what it is that they're seeing, and having new people in those roles and new people shaping those stories and choosing what stories get told and what gets highlighted and how they're shown to the people. That could actually have a really major influence on how much people trust the media, as well as the kind of stories that we're getting that they feel is important for us to know about. It could perceivably shake up a whole bunch of New Zealand society in terms of how we react to what our politicians are doing and how we feel our politicians are doing. So keep an eye on this over the next 12 months because it's certainly not going to be a fast change, but it is going to be a fascinating one to sit down and watch to see if in a year from now we've got a completely different viewpoint being presented on media, whether they're focusing on the public as a whole or if they're going individuals or maybe it's something completely different. And seeing how that filters through to things like social media pages and output as well will also be really interesting. So yeah, prepare for a big shakeup you didn't know was coming and you might not even notice while it's happening.